The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising and marketing and journalism. And we do that by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. This week, we learned from Gianna Prudente. Gianna is an associate news editor at LinkedIn News. As a journalist working in tech, she shares the news shaping today's workforce and highlights the conversations happening around it. As an associate news editor for jobs and career development at LinkedIn, she helps young professionals like you navigate the changing world of work. In Gianna's weekly newsletter, Keeping the Balance, she amplifies Gen Z voices, highlighting their unique career paths. She also speaks to experts for insight on launching and growing Gen Z careers. Amazing. Gianna tells us how she broke into journalism at a tech company and highlights some of the many insights she has learned about Gen Z and advice on how we can break in and thrive into our dream careers. Gianna is a fantastic connection and provides so much value in her weekly newsletter. We've included all the necessary links to connect with her and her newsletter in our bio. And hey, while you're on LinkedIn, why don't you go ahead and give Breaking and Entering a follow for the heck of it. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberg. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Gianna Prudente, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. So this is an advertising, marketing, and journalism podcast. It's called Breaking and Entering Advertising, but that's okay. We are here to talk about you, what you do, because you're an associate news editor at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk.
You make it sound so exciting, and it is. So I'm excited to talk about that more.
Yeah, and I think we were just talking offline, and you were saying like a lot of people switch jobs when they're just starting out, but you seem pretty happy at LinkedIn, and you said you can see yourself there long term. Is that true, or did I expose you?
You did expose me, but it is true. I really love my job. I love the company and the people we work with and the mission that we're working towards every day. So I'm very content in my role and I see a lot of room for growth and I'm very happy. But as I was mentioning, it's kind of been weird. A lot of my friends have already changed jobs post grad. It just hasn't been the experience for me, but I think it's very common among Gen Z, right? We stay in jobs for a few years and then look for the next opportunity.
Absolutely. And why do you think that while we're on that? Like, why does Gen Z, do millennials do this, or are there other generations? I know my parents stuck for the same job for 30 years, never thought about switching. What makes Gen Z different?
Yeah, I don't know about millennials and older generations, but I think, that was the sentiment for a while. If you join a great company, you stay there till the end of time if you want to do that. And even at LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who've been here for like 10 years and they've grown and they've been able to go across the company and change teams, which is amazing. But I think with Gen Z, there's just so many options out there that there's no reason to stay, complacent in a job if it's not fulfilling or there's a new opportunity. I think also we're very multidimensional. So we want to do one thing maybe for a certain period of time, and then our passions change or our interests change and new opportunity comes up that we want to explore in a different industry or role. You see a lot of Gen Z entrepreneurs. So a lot of pivoting happening, but I think it's a good thing because, that's where a lot of growth happens when you do push yourself outside of your comfort zone and do change jobs like that.
If I'm a employer listening to this right now, I'd be curious, like, how do we keep Gen Z to stay in our specific roles? I think that's like, that would be my number one priority if I was a boss or I was running my own company. Do you
Yeah.
see like best practices, like obviously at LinkedIn that you notice or other companies doing interesting things?
Yeah, I think employee retention is really interesting when it comes to Gen Z because the whole narrative of us being job hoppers, I think, scares a lot of people. But when you're really willing to invest in the time of your employees and give them resources, like we know Gen Z really loves upskilling. So if you prioritize upskilling your employees and you give them opportunities to level up their own careers, I think, matching them with mentors, there's so many different training opportunities that can be done to really keep them plugged into the company and and make them feel a part of it and help them grow so they don't have to look elsewhere for those opportunities.
Gotcha. And I think the listeners are like, "Wow, we're already probably getting pretty deep into this," and this is because this is what you talk about, right? Like,
Yeah.
as a news editor at LinkedIn, like, I wanna know more about that role
Mhm.
specifically. Like, what do you do? What do you write about? And yeah, just tell me about that role specifically.
Definitely. So on the editorial side of LinkedIn News, I'm on our jobs and career development team. So I'm focused on job search and career content. And within that, I focus on Gen Z professionals, which has been a fun experience because I'm Gen Z myself. So
Yeah.
getting to report on my own generation or speak to, my peers has been a really fun experience. So I have a weekly newsletter, Keeping the Balance, where I explore all things about Gen Z. So I'm interviewing really cool people who are doing things, very unique with their careers to highlight those career paths. And also speaking to experts who can give us insight to help us, as we launch and grow our careers. So it's been really fun. I think the best part of being on this Gen Z beat is really leaning into my own experience, especially this whole post grad transition. It's a very interesting time. So really leaning
Yep.
into kind of my own experience and let that lead the reporting. So, I've done something about feeling isolated in a remote setting, and that really just came from my own experience. I spoke to an expert about it, like how do we combat remote work, loneliness, and it resonated with a lot of Gen Z. So it's definitely, going off my own experience, bringing myself into the reporting and getting to meet some amazing people who have already grown their careers so much in just a short amount of time.
Interesting. Who's, like, the main target audience then of your newsletter?
Gen Z. So I'm writing for Gen Z. So all the insights, it's, it's for people who are early in their careers. And I think also in speaking with other Gen Zers, I get to highlight their unique career path. So even if you aren't going to go from this role to that role like they did, there's still so many learnings and takeaways that you can apply to your own career. And like when I hear advice, I love to hear it from my peers. I don't want to turn to somebody who is, sometimes maybe more removed from the situation. And I think that's a huge sentiment
Yeah.
about Gen Z. A lot of people are talking about us rather than to us. So that's definitely something I really try to keep in mind.
Yeah, I noticed, like, even with this podcast, some of the most listened to episodes are those that are 2 to 3 years out. They can really see themselves. They went to school. Some of these people definitely gets a lot of the highest listen rate is from people close. So that makes
Mhm.
sense. But could anybody else, like maybe not Gen Z, get value from these newsletters, like seeing how you guys operate, how we operate, taking learnings? I know there's a professor that specializes in Gen Z at
Mhm.
Rutgers. So do you see other people listening or reading into your blog?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hunger for insights on Gen Z from, managers or just mid to senior level professionals. So I think you get to just learn about Gen Z and the way that we behave. And I feel like as soon as we entered the workforce, there were so many news articles, what does Gen Z want out of work? And that was just the hottest topic because we're the youngest generation of workers. We're going to be a large part of the workforce in a few years. So really understanding our needs and our values from day one is what's important. So being able to hear that from Gen Zers themselves, there's no one better. So it's definitely valuable. And I think as soon as I launched my newsletter, I really realized that there was that appetite for Gen Z insights on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Because people just want to get a better pulse on what we want out of work since these are, future leaders in the workforce.
And I wanna definitely dive into some of those insights and what you're learning from the newsletter, but I also wanna know, what does the LinkedIn team look like that you work on? Nobody else
Mhm.
is covering Gen Z, I'm assuming. So how does that structure work at LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we're a team of global editors, but our US team, it's we have different, segments. So we have a daily news team that works on breaking news, and they're doing the day's, daily news as it says. So they're, publishing storylines every day about the top business news stories. Um, the team that I sit on, it's changed a bit, but we're all beat reporters. So somebody's covering finance, someone's covering sustainability, healthcare, frontline workers, tech. And within that is this kind of jobs and career development beat that a few of us sit on. And that's where I fall into kind of the latter of things. So a lot of people on my team come from very traditional reporting backgrounds, and we get to do original reporting through our newsletters on LinkedIn.
Gotcha. So what are the other beats within the or other beats within the career reporting sector?
Yeah, so I'm focused on Gen Z professionals and kind of the younger generation, which includes students, which is a fun topic right now. But my colleague, Leah, she covers human potential. So it's a lot about how to be your best self and always improving yourself and your well being and putting that first. And then our manager, Andrew, kind of oversees jobs and career development as a whole. So he's very much just taking the broad view on this beat. Yeah.
Why did you say the students was interesting right now?
It's a growing focus for sure. I think we want to make sure that LinkedIn's a place for students where they feel comfortable coming. So right now, I'm trying to highlight a lot of Gen Z students in my newsletter and making sure they feel comfortable, posting on the platform and wanting to be a part of the community that we've built. So it's interesting now that my B encompasses students, but I know, in a few years' time, Gen Z won't be students anymore. So it's really interesting to see how that's going to evolve at some point as well.
Yeah, so you think your newsletter is just gonna take on that career path of Gen Z and getting
Oh,
into
yeah.
management and just grow from there?
I guess so, which is kind of cool if it does take that route. I'm kind of open to exploring anything, but I think if my beat grows as the generation grows and I'm growing with it, that could be a really cool thing and see how, you know, we've changed over time. I think I might be one of the first people who's covered a generation on the team. So it's interesting to see what shape this is going to take.
What's the one after Gen Z? Is that Gen A?
I have no idea. It might be. Oh
Who
gosh.
knows? Who know Oh, you're
That's
all you're
crazy.
that just shows you're focused, you're ready to go,
Oh,
you
I'm
know?
laser focused on Gen Z. No
What's
millennials,
something
no nothing.
what's something surprising about this generation, I guess, that people might not know?
Ugh. I mean, I think we're so open about everything, so I think everybody knows everything about us, but I think the Gen Z side hustle culture is really interesting, and we see that a lot of, recent grads and other career starters don't want to kind of put their eggs in one basket and really trust in just an employer for their income, and I think we see that
Ooh,
now in the uncertain economy. It's just, you
yeah.
want something to fall back on, and we're a generation that has grown up with a lot of mistrust. So it totally makes sense. So a lot of Gen Zers have side hustles that they spend a lot of time diverting to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and even in breaking in advertising and marketing, we hear so often that your work matters, like, show this in your portfolio. I'm not sure how journalism works, but,
Mhm.
like, we're told our portfolio matters, show us that you can do campaigns, that you have the spec work and you have the experience. And then on top of that, they wanna see that you're interesting and you're interested in things, so you have to have a side project,
Yeah.
uh, some sort of Instagram or business. It's just, like,
Mhm.
kind of mandatory if you wanna be a creative in advertising. Do you
Yeah.
see that in journalism as well?
Absolutely. And I think also when the pandemic happened and I graduated in 2021, so many internship programs were getting canceled during that time. And I think everybody was freaking out. Like it's the summer after junior year, I'm supposed to be having the internship that lands me the job. And so a lot of the advice we received back then was
Yep.
whatever you want to do, start doing it on your own. So if you're a reporter, start a blog and start putting an article somewhere. Go to LinkedIn and publish your, articles and do that so you can build a body of work that you then present. Because when we apply to jobs, we send our portfolio link, so we need that as well. Um, so yeah, I think it kind of happened at that moment for a lot of people where they were like, if I don't have an opportunity elsewhere, how do I create that for myself? And it's just kind of taken off
Exactly,
from there.
and I think it might have stuck too. So the betting, like,
Mhm.
I guess I think that mindset is still here. So tell us
100%.
then, so you about your background then. So student, you went to Syracuse, I believe, is that correct?
Mhm.
Which is
Yes.
a great journalism program, some of the best journalists I know. Uh,
Yeah,
and
it was
this
fun.
I mean, do you guys just produce journalists? Like, what's going on over there? Like,
Yeah, we have a really great communication school at Syracuse, and it was a very unique experience. I think now when I reflect back and I speak to other people who went to different J schools or maybe they went to grad school for journalism. So it's a little bit of a different experience, but it was very immersive. Like from day one, we were off campus reporting and getting equipment and going off and shooting videos, and it was very intense. And it
yeah,
was tough. when you're transitioning to college as a freshman to be doing that as well. But it really got us career ready. And I think, we were able to graduate with a great body of work that was just from our classes alone was pretty amazing.
So when did you say to yourself, I want to be a journalist?
So I think I probably wanted to be like a doctor, a teacher, who knows when I was growing up, but I always loved writing. And the only thing I didn't love about writing was like the creative aspect of it. So I didn't feel like I had that creativity in me, but I knew I loved to write. I was always stronger in like the humanities and math and science. So sophomore year of high school, I took my first journalism course, and my teacher was a huge influence on me, but I also just fell in love with how objective journalism is and the idea that you can amplify somebody else's story. And it's just fact. Like you can't dispute the facts, and you get to amplify these voices and tell somebody else's story, through their lens, which I thought was incredible. So I started getting involved in our high school paper, and eventually senior year was our editor in chief. Really had a lot of mentorship from my teacher at the time, which I'm very grateful to her. And so I was very fortunate to know I wanted to do journalism, that I could target top schools. Um, but my family wanted me to do, some business. So I did apply to some schools to be like a finance major. Everyone in my family is an accountant pretty much. So they were like, why journalism? But ultimately applied early decision to Newhouse at Syracuse, got in, and the rest is history.
And your parents were okay with it eventually?
Yeah, it was like, we have no connections to help you. I think that's like the concern for any parent, especially, when they're investing in you to get a college education, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But I kind of had the mentality of, I always like, no, I can figure it out. So it's like, I
Yeah.
don't really need your connections.
Oh,
Thank you very
nice.
much.
Love yeah.
Honest. Yeah. It's just like, I feel so passionate about that, and accounting or finance was not exactly what I wanted to do. But I will say that when I was at Syracuse, I really wanted my minor to kind of shape the beat that I would go into
Smart.
after work, after school. So I did pick up a finance minor, which did make them happy. But I knew I wanted to do business journalism, so I kind of used that to mold my experience, and get some of that to lean back on and hopefully differentiate myself when I was applying to jobs.
Interesting. So you had the finance minor. So is this that's probably pretty relevant then. Do most journalism majors have that their minor reflects the beat that they wanna pursue?
That's something the approach I took, and I know some of my
Makes
friends
sense.
did the same. But I think, there's so many options when you're in school. There's so much to explore. And I think I probably changed my minor, or I was going to do political science and then policy studies and then this and that. And then I was like, okay, finance, because business reporting sounds cool. So there's a lot of room to explore. And then I don't know, I think that really helps me because even within my classes, I was able to pick a beat each semester that I wanted to report on. So like I reported on Syracuse small businesses during my junior year. And
What was
not
your favorite small business that you reported
there's
on?
a ton. Syracuse is thriving with small businesses, and a lot of my focus was on Black-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, which was amazing. And especially during the time of a pandemic, to
Mhm.
be on that beat was really cool. But the whole city is incredibly vibrant, and it's very entrepreneurial. So I loved being on that beat. And there's even a ton of small businesses that come onto campus, which is nice. Um, so very much a part of the community in Syracuse. But yeah, I really wanted my minor to kind of influence that. I don't know how much of the finance actually really helped.
Oh, I was gonna say
Yeah.
ask you next. So what was your intention then? Like, what at the time, what publications did you think you would want to work for?
Yeah, I think probably sophomore to junior year, I was targeting like Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. I mean, it's really tough being a journalism major. I think at Syracuse, we had two options. It was broadcast and digital journalism at the time, or newspaper and online. I never wanted to be in front of a camera. So I'm doing newspaper, plus I love to write. But I think a lot of times when you go a journalism route, there's like this idea that you're going to go to some local station in some random state after this, and you're going to have to report on local journals, like local news. And that's a lot of times a path somebody takes, and it works out. But I didn't really want that. Like, I wanted to work for a bigger company, and obviously that's incredibly competitive. So I was applying to, Business Insider, CNBC, all of that. And those were kind of my targets, networking with people at those companies. And I applied to a bunch of them junior year, but of course, a lot was canceled over the pandemic. So,
So what is the traditional networking route? Like, connect on LinkedIn, or do you send like your reel or your portfolio to these
yeah.
people? Like, what's the game plan?
Yeah, I definitely used LinkedIn to network. So a lot of it was anytime I applied to a company or I was interested in a company, I would go on LinkedIn, look up the company, filter the people who work there by my college, and reach out to those people. And that was like the easiest connection to say I went to Newhouse. And I think what was also a little bit of a challenge is a lot of people say and I think at a lot of schools, there's an alumni network, but I think that really kicks in when you graduate.
Mhm.
So during the time when you're looking for internships, people can help you, of course, but really it was just looking for knowledge. And I really wanted to understand more about business reporting because I had no idea like what that actually looked like in action. So I just kind of consumed a bunch of news. I talked to a bunch of people and was like, is this actually something that I want to do if I can't get that experience, firsthand?
Right. I mean, that's pretty similar. I mean, LinkedIn's the best tool for that. I
Mhm.
mean, it is incredible.
Shout out
Um,
LinkedIn.
I mean, I tell all the listeners that you just connect with people and ask for 15 minutes on to learn more about them,
Mhm.
and that usually works if they're free. If they don't respond, they're usually just busy.
Yeah, 100%. And even now when I have people reach out to me, I'm like jumping at the opportunity to speak to them because I know that I was in that position not too long ago.
Mhm.
And I feel like I've already gained so much insight since, launching my own career that I would love to share with people who are, following a similar path.
Yep, of course. So you did the networking route to, but the internship season kind of ended because of the
Mhm.
pandemic. So what happened after that? How did you end up where you're at today?
Yeah. So long story, how do I make this short? I was so junior in Syracuse. I was studying abroad in Florence, Italy, having, the best time, living with the host family, loving my experience, and I saw that at our career service center, there was an opportunity for a LinkedIn fellowship over the summer. I didn't know
Nice.
LinkedIn had an editorial side at that time, but I was like, I'm gonna intend to apply to this because it's business. Like, this is, something I could really be interested in. Um so I said that I was intending to apply to it, and I was waiting for the application to come out. It did. Get sent home from abroad because of the pandemic, so the program got cut early, and I missed the application for LinkedIn. So I was like, "Oh, crap, like, I don't know, all these
Oh,
programs are getting canceled anyway, maybe this summer I'm just not gonna do anything. We'll see." And then somebody from our career services center at Syracuse reached out to me and was like, "Do you still want to apply to this?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Sent my stuff over right away. Within like a week or so, I was interviewing in my basement with my first manager at LinkedIn. And it was like the most
how,
bizarre thing. I just
how
got
did that
some,
happen?
it
How did
was insane.
what was so the career services representative just like hooked you up and figured it
Yeah,
out?
honestly, like, I say it was a bunch of luck because I think first coming from Syracuse, we had that relationship with LinkedIn at the time, which was really amazing. So it was kind of like they knew they were getting quality interns at that time. And the process just moved really fast. I think it ramped up because everyone like didn't know what was going on. So it kind of moved quick. And had a few interviews, did like a writing test, got the offer for the internship. And I started that summer, like in my basement in New
Yeah.
Jersey with another kid from Syracuse. And yeah, just hoped to never leave. And I really maintained connections to ultimately come back.
So that was the internship, or the
Mhm.
fellowship. And
Yeah.
what summer? That was summer of what year?
2020.
Gotcha.
Peak pandemic. Yeah.
So
It was
writing in
great.
your basement at home or wherever you were.
Yes,
Um,
joining this virtual team, and they were all leaving the office, so they had just transitioned. I had just finished online school, so it's just like, obviously, everyone remembers that summer. We didn't have to get into it. It was just
yeah.
like
Yeah.
nobody knew what the hell was happening, so Yeah.
Gotcha. So that was going into your senior year,
Mhm.
and you obviously did stuff well. I I would imagine, like, working from home as a journalist, I'm not sure, like, is that I mean, you can still get stuff done, right? Do you
Yeah.
thrive better in the office? Do I don't know what you do now, but or
Yeah.
do you like working at home?
Yeah, I sometimes say I'm overly productive. Like I will drive myself crazy because I'll just work nonstop and not take breaks, but I'm just like always moving. So I really like when days that I have a lot of work to be heads down at home. And LinkedIn, when I started, was fully remote. Now our offices are open. So we have the option to go in, which has been really great. And I think I needed that after a year of mostly remote work, feeling a little bit isolated.
Yeah.
So I go in twice a week now, which is nice, but I find myself like getting not distracted, but there's so many opportunities to catch up with people, or you're going to grab coffee, or you're getting pulled into this meeting because you're there. So your attention gets pulled in a million directions when you're in the office. So I've tried to save like my heads down work for days that I don't go in, just so I can really enjoy that time and make the most of it when I'm in person with my colleagues.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And we see that in my job too. And I like to go in every day though, because I have to know everybody at my role. I
Mm,
do like a lot of internal communications. So I like to see people and get to know everybody. But that's just
yeah,
me.
there's a
Um,
lot of value in that.
heck yeah. And especially for like if you're just starting out and you're at a large company, I think there's value of in going in, meeting people, getting that visibility, bouncing
Mhm.
around in those meeting rooms, even like they might pull you in to get some insights for whatever role. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's been a really great experience having the option to go into the office. I feel like I've grown closer to all my colleagues in that time. I just feel so much more connected to the company having that option to go in. I know, some people don't live close to an office, so they don't have that privilege. So I know it's a rarity, but I do really try to make the most of that time because, you know, it's just so valuable to really be in person and get to connect and grab lunch together
Mhm.
and have that, like, non-work time to really get to know each other better.
Absolutely. And so tell me more then. So the internship went well, fellowship,
Wow.
um, and then you go into your senior year, correct?
Yeah, so at the end of the fellowship, I was like, "Okay, LinkedIn's a pretty cool place. I wanna probably work here. How do I make
Yep.
that happen?" So I really think I loved the work that I was doing, but I really just, loved the company and I loved the people that I work with. And I quickly realized, like, that's so important. Even if you love the work you do, you have to love the people that you're working with. So I at the end of the fellowship, I made it very clear to my manager at the time that I would like the opportunity to rejoin the team if there was one. And so now I was going back to senior year. I knew spring semester I was going to be part-time at school. I only had like a few credits left. So I had told him that at the time. I was like, I'm going to be part-time this spring. Maybe we could work something out where I could help out on the team, knowing that
Nice.
it would probably still be remote. So I went back to school and really maintained my relationships. I was checking in. And then ultimately, when it was like winter break, I'd reached out and said, it's like the springtime's coming. I really would love to help out on the team in any way. It worked out. And I started on a contract role. So in March of my spring semester, started on a contract at LinkedIn. I worked part-time. So in between classes, I was logging on and off, which was a crazy experience because I was like, I don't care about school anymore. And
Right.
I was in like my very challenging journalism classes. I was in the honors program. So I had like a thesis paper to write. And I'm like, this is just not my priority anymore. Like I have a job and this
Did
is
you
like,
tell your professors that?
I did not, because if you were not 100% dedicated to journalism and eat, sleep, breathing journalism, I mean, I was, right? Because I was
But
working,
you
but
were.
yeah, for
You
being,
were.
some teachers did leverage it, which was kind of cool. Like they would help have me bring in my resume and talk about LinkedIn. So it was a cool experience. And some teachers were really like open to that. Um, but yeah, so I started part-time and then I was on a contract role at LinkedIn. So I wasn't technically a full-time hire.
Right.
And was after graduation started full-time hours. And then at the end of or that fall, after the summer of my post-grad summer, in November, a full-time role opened up on a different team than I was on under the editorial side of LinkedIn. And I transitioned to that role, and I've been in that position for just about a year now, just
Gotcha.
over a
What,
year.
what was that first team?
So the first team I joined was the daily news team. So that
Gotcha.
was breaking news. I was doing a little bit of podcast video stuff, helping out, which is fun. But then I transitioned to the reporting team at the time.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've been in my role for November was a year. So, and in March, it'll be 2 years at LinkedIn, which is pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And looking back now, like what were those key things that what key advice would you give to students like to emulate your career path or find their own success?
Yeah, I think it's all about maintaining relationships. And I know we talked about this earlier, but there's so much knowledge that exists in other people's heads. And everybody is so, especially when you're a new grad or you're starting your career, I think so many people are open to giving you advice and helping you find direction and give you guidance. So it's reaching out in a very authentic way that's authentic to you. And you don't want to lead like asking for a job offer or saying, I applied to this job, but finding that connection and reaching out, establishing a relationship, and seeing how you could provide value too. They think, like we were saying before, Gen Z is in a very unique position where everybody wants to know what we want out of work. That's value that you bring to a conversation, right? You have those insights because that's your experience. So you leverage that, like pitch that as something you can share. Like, here, I can bring you my fresh perspective, and I'd love to hear about your day to day and see how you're thinking about Gen Z and all of that. So I think it's about really just making those connections. And for me, it was about maintaining those when I went back to school. And, I always say, like, even with interviewing, everything's polite persistence. You always have to just bop in and be like, it's me, I'm still here. What are you doing? Here's what I've been up to. Because that's ultimately what helped me land the contract position and then transition to a full-time role was keeping those connections alive and maintaining those even when I was away.
Yeah, definitely. And the earlier you start, I think making connections, like especially for advertising, like reach out, go to those job fairs, go online, and then stick around with these people.
Yeah. Yeah. And check in, like, if you're working on a cool project, send them and be like, oh, I just worked on this. Or I don't know, our advertising student at school had to do like a huge capstone project.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it was like a semester long thing. If you
Yeah.
have a relationship with somebody that you want to like work at this company, send them that. Like that's so cool. And why wouldn't you leverage and stuff that you're doing in school as a way to kind of like sell yourself as a someone to be job seeker?
Yeah, and like even I just did this like a couple hours ago. I somebody I know on the podcast, I'm not even like looking for a job necessarily. I just sent them an article about their company. I was like,
Yeah.
"Were you part of this? This is really cool." Like
Yeah.
I just wanted to stay in the loop with them. And or another thing I was kind of messing around thinking about, like you brought up a good point, like being Gen Z, people want to know about our perspective, and a lot of companies find value in that.
Mhm.
A lot of brands find value in that. If I'm a student today, I might even consider doing like a quick survey from like my peers and
Yeah.
be like, "Hey, like I just want to let you know these are some findings that I figured out from my peers here at my university about your brand, about your company. Here they are. Take them as you want if you want them." Like I think
Yeah.
that could be something
Absolutely.
that's of value.
Yeah, and even now when I'm Gen Z and I'm writing for Gen Z, but I'm still like I can't be represented, like I can't be the whole generation, right? So I
Right.
know that. So I'm like, oh, what are you guys thinking about? I'm asking my friends. I'm always surveying people to be like, what topics do you want to know? How do you want to receive this content? What type of content do you want? And it's always just like
Yeah.
thinking of ways that you can improve. And so, yeah, bringing those insights and being like, here's this little nugget of information that you might find valuable. If you don't, okay, I didn't waste my time. Like, this was still me getting to talk to people. So, at the end of the day, it could be valuable. I think people would really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I was gonna ask you, so like throughout school and even now, do you have a side project? I know that's common with Gen Z. So do you have
I
anything?
know. I also say I'm like the worst Gen Z person because I don't, which I hate that for
That's messed
myself.
up. Like I
I
feel like you
know.
it's
Yeah.
no, like not no, even having to say that, like not everybody needs to have a side project.
I
Like
know.
let's
But
maybe we can get rid of that.
it is interesting because obviously a majority of Gen Zers have that, and I speak to a lot of Gen Zers with side hustles, but a lot of people will say, like, "No Gen Z person doesn't have a side hustle." Like, they do great, not everybody does, and I really would love something, um, like, I think also with side hustles, a lot of people are like, it's for the money, or maybe it could just be a passion project. Like I want to find my passion project. So I don't really think of it kind of as a side hustle. But I feel like I was so focused on transitioning into a role and just like figuring out my first year of post grad life that now I'm like, okay, well, what's next? Like obviously my job can't be everything. My passion
Yeah.
has always been journalism. Now I'm doing this as my job. So what's like my thing? I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm
What do
on
you,
that journey.
what do you like? What do you do in your free time then when
Ugh,
you're not
I'm
working?
just trying to prioritize my mental health, spend time with family and friends, but I really love volunteering and would love to be doing more within my own community. So I think that's something I was just talking to my friend at work about stuff he's doing within his community. So I think there's a lot to explore there. But
Mhm.
I
Gotcha.
don't know. I'm just taking it day by day and
That
trying
seriously.
to figure all
That's
this
what I
out.
say. That's literally what I say. I just go,
Yeah,
I'm taking day by day.
it
Just
is.
who
It's
knows?
tough. The post-grad transition is not talked about enough. We set really high expectations, I think, for what the working world gonna be, and then you're like, "This is the rest of my life." What
Emails,
Yeah,
fucking
it's
emails.
emails, it's meetings, and yeah, we definitely romanticize it. So, I think a lot of it was getting through those reality checks and now feeling much more secure to really explore outside of work.
And for me, like when I'm not feeling fulfilled by work, which I do feel fulfilled by my job, but when I'm not, I have the podcast
Mhm.
and I can get it's my creative outlet. It's my therapy every week. It
Mhm.
also helps me uh, grow in my career and network. So it gives me some job security. So that's why I love doing my project, this podcast, and I have a team of students across at different universities that are also joining in on it too. So
That's amazing. That's
thanks.
awesome. Yeah, I think a podcast is amazing. I love podcasts. I love listening to podcasts.
What's your favorite?
I love How I Built This with Guy Raz.
Oh, I
I
love
think
that
that's
one too.
great. I just love when he picks people's brains, but obviously I have to plug in LinkedIn podcast network. So check out all the ones coming from our team as
Oh,
well. But
nice.
yeah,
Is it a
lot
career
of great
oriented
career
one
stuff. They're all pretty much career oriented.
or
My
like Gen Z?
manager, no, not yet. But my manager Andrew has his called Get Hired. My colleague Leah has hers called In the Arena. Our
Okay.
editor in chief Dan has This Is Working. Jesse Hempel, Hello Monday. So there's a ton of podcasts uh, on LinkedIn that are in house as well as external. So
Nice.
a lot of
Seems
career
like
insights
loading
coming
up
for you.
one.
But
Seems like you might be loading up one for Gen Z then.
perhaps I will not say no, but we will see. If
Day
there's an
by day.
opportunity, I would love it. Yes, day by day. That's all we can do.
Gotcha. Okay. How can people reach out to you? LinkedIn?
Yep, you can
That's
follow
what
me on LinkedIn.
everybody says on the podcast.
Well, that's
Like,
like too perfect because I work there. So you
yeah.
have to follow me. You have to you can follow me, you don't have to. And you can send me a DM, and we can message. And if you want to we can get a coffee chat or do whatever to catch up and meet new people. I'm always open to talking to people who are early in their careers, whether you're recent grads or, you know, looking to you're approaching graduation. I would love to get to know you and share some insights. So find me on LinkedIn and reach out to me there.
And then subscribe to
Subscribe
Keeping
to
the
my
Balance.
newsletter. Yes, thank you for the plug.
42 editions
Yes.
published weekly.
Publishing it weekly. Yes, every Wednesday in your inbox.
Why Wednesday?
It's just the day I chose. Everybody kind of scatters there.
Uh,
Everybody has a day. I'm
Gotcha.
on Wednesday.
I'm Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Good
Okay.
to know.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll have people reach out. Thank you so much, Gianna. This has been fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do it without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest.